what isn't working in your life. Maybe it's something in your body that causes you discomfort or pain or even worse. Maybe it is something that you continuously feel difficulty about. Can I be really curious to let go of everything I have made this about, I have concluded this is about, I have experts telling me this is about, but nothing changed because I'm still walking around with whatever isn't working in my life? Can I let go of all of it? Because that apparently was not clearly seeing what was going on. That was adding more to the story, adding more to the scaffolding to hold it all in place. Now, that needs to go. All of it needs to go. And that sometimes is very difficult for people.
Once you realize, like, okay, I'm curious to know what else can I experience in my life. Welcome to Follow Me and Advance. We are here in the second episode with my friend Ron. We are here in Bali, and my name is Javi. So how are you, Ron?
I'm good. I'm loving Bali even more than I was loving it the last time we spoke.
It's fun, right?
It's great. It's just really, really a little paradise here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Very true. We've been talking about this book, the concepts. I've been reading it one and again, like coming back. And I know that this book has a lot of new information for us, but I think that also is interesting to connect it with our own experience. So today, I would love to talk with you about the layers, like the main structure that we have, and connect it with what we've been living in our life, so we can share with the people who is watching this episode how they can also relate to their own life. Okay, so can we start by this main structure?
We can.
Yeah.
You mean the structure of the being?
Yeah.
And then the design that the being makes to have certain experiences, and then something of a structure that is related to your identity that gets stored as you live this life and starts to, let's say, define more and more how you experience reality. And then the thinking mind that aims to make sense of all of it and offers commentary about all of it. And that's in a way what we believe is true, but isn't always guided by what is true when it tells us these things.
Right.
Those layers we're talking about. Yes.
Those layers. So if someone is about to read a book or just read it, how you can start from the basic thing? What should be like the first start to start looking at?
The idea of this book, but also the first book that I wrote, is to give people clarity about something that they just haven't seen yet about themselves. And it is about something that isn't working in their life, and it can show up in different ways. This morning I was in a cafe and I was talking to a guy who has been experiencing that people were betraying him many times in his life. Now, until we had the conversation, he never realized that this is a pattern that is specific to him, but it is. And it's not random that this pattern occurs for him. There is something that he is generating as this experience that he hasn't seen that makes this come up again and again and again. And so when you ask what's the first thing people should maybe look at or ask, it relates to, okay, what isn't working in your life? Maybe it's something in your body that causes you discomfort or pain or even worse. I've had cases that are worse than a little bit of discomfort. Maybe it's a pattern, like in his case, that people betray him, that keeps repeating throughout your life. And maybe you haven't even noticed that there is a pattern, but now that you think about it, you're like, this keeps happening to me. That's not fun. Maybe you feel limited in what you can create, and you don't really understand what is the reason for it, but you just know that you can create something beyond where you are now. But it doesn't want to go. And it's not like you're lazy, it's just that it doesn't want to go. And you can't really see what's going on, but it doesn't want to go. And so most people have some of these things going on in their life. Many people have more than one of these things going on in their life. Now, the idea is that's not random. It never is. I know that when we are experiencing these things, we just think, yeah, this is how life is. Life is difficult. I don't know, this just happens to me. And you don't really give it much other thought than blaming the circumstances, blaming the other person. I have bad luck, whatever it is. It never really goes to the point of there is something that this gets generated from that is not random. And that something has to do with the energy that is in me about something that I haven't seen. And that's the essence of what this is about. It's not, there's nothing wrong with anybody. It's just you haven't seen something yet. That's it. And once you do, you can see what actually is generating the things that aren't working for you. And once you've seen it, it's often the case that you can change it fast. Now, I know there are a lot of people that think they have seen it, that have an explanation for what's going on. You have not seen it. If it's still there, you have not seen clearly what is generating it. Because once you have, you can see it clearly, you can see it without a judgment attached to any of it. It dissolves.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And so the art, it's not, well, let's call it art. The art is, can I be really curious to let go of everything I have made this about, I have concluded this is about, I have experts telling me this is about, but nothing changed because I'm still walking around with whatever isn't working in my life. Can I let go of all of it? Because that apparently was not clearly seeing what was going on. That was adding more to the story, adding more to the scaffolding to hold it all in place. No, that needs to go. And that sometimes is very difficult for people. And in that moment, a possibility arrives of seeing more of what actually is going on. But as long as you hold all that story, all these diagnoses, all these things that you have made it about in place, you will not see it.
Yeah, I feel like it's so important to share all this knowledge that you are starting to share in this channel, because I've been there also trying so many things, going to astrology readings, doing hypnosis, doing many therapies, and some of them helped me to see a part of myself, but none of them really changed me for a long time as I did when I worked with you. So I think we need more of this new perspective that you are sharing.
That's very nice. Thank you for saying that, and also it's amazing that you have experienced it. So, first step starts with knowing there is nothing wrong with you, and that's already not so easy for many people to know, because many people think there is something wrong with them, and we live in a world where when you deviate in one way or another from what, I don't know, the norm is, then there is a lot of subtle or not so subtle judgment that is around in our world. You're not very rich. I won't say anything, but we all know you're not very rich, so you're not as good as the person who's a multimillionaire. I mean, kind of, this stuff sits everywhere in our societies. You were smart at school, you had good grades, because that type of information excited you in that moment, and you knew how to convert that into answers that other people thought were important, and you didn't. Oh, no, it's you don't have to make a point out of it, but we all think something of this. There is so much of this subtle judgment that is part of our reality that it's almost impossible for people to not get affected by any of it. It's very difficult because we're exposed to it from quite young.
So once you realize, like, okay, I'm curious to know what else can I experience in my life. I think I went through that when I was in this period of density, how you call it, it's a nice name, or feeling so depressed. Where I, at some point, I started skating when I became 18, and I realized that didn't want to be a victim anymore. I start to feel, maybe for the skating and falling and getting up, I realized that, okay, this is fun.
Yeah.
Like, my mind was in another thing, and in that moment, I, I remember that I thought, I don't want to be a victim my whole life. Like, it has to be something different, and I put my energy on skating. So once you realize, okay, I want something different, how do you start changing?
I said before, none of these methods are, let's say, wrong, or none of these methods can't work. The choice that you made is the essence of what is important. So I choose a life where I no longer want to be a victim is far more relevant than whatever method you subsequently want to work with for a while. And you probably have experienced this too. You've done something and maybe it gave you a little bit of extra opening, or you made you feel a little bit better, and then for that moment that was fine, and then something else came on your path and then that helped you, and then something else came on your path and then that helps you. And it's not random that people get drawn to a certain method, because in that moment that resonates with where they are. Now, the risk is that people start coming to a conclusion that because a method once helped them with something, it now is the method.
Right.
And you can see the, I don't know, the yoga teacher that's still highly anxious is an example of somebody who practices a certain method every day, but it doesn't really do anything anymore because it isn't putting her in a space where she changes something about what's actually generating that anxiety all the time. And so the yoga pose looks perfect, but the baseline anxiety level is very high of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we can get caught in is, again, going to a fixed point of view about, this is the perfect method. This helped me once, so I keep going and going and going without anything really changing anymore. That in itself is fine too. If you ask me, what do we need to do? I certainly am not somebody who says this is the perfect method and that's what everybody should be doing. I just want to say, if you found something that resonated with you and it helped you, don't fall into the trap of thinking that that is the perfect method for you for life. What I know is that there is a lot of unclarity in people's world, and there's a lot of noise, a lot of storytelling. And when you remove the storytelling and you remove what the mind keeps feeding you and is not really based on what is true, clarity can increase. And when clarity increases, things can change very fast. When people are stuck, or when people feel something or different things aren't working in their life, they haven't seen clearly what is underneath that. Because the problem isn't that not everything is perfect. The problem is, I am here and I have no perspective to change it. I'm here and I don't know how to get to a point where I want to go to. It's not a problem that you are not in the perfect life all the time, but if there is no movement in a direction where you like to go, if there is no creation of something that makes you feel happy, those things make people feel not so nice. And what keeps you stuck, what keeps the pattern alive, is something you haven't seen. And that is often a construct of conclusions and judgments, and they may not be yours. They may come in all kinds of ways that, of course, you can't know how this works. The book helps with sort of showing those pathways. And those constructs keep you stuck because you don't see them, you do not know you're functioning from them, but they're there. Seeing them clearly allows you to let them go.
Okay. So I understand now that when you decide to change and you decide to start being more curious, asking what is what I'm not seeing,
Yes.
how can you connect with the truth? Like, how does it feel in the body?
So the difficulty with this is, of course, again, the thinking mind that tells us, no, it's like this. But the thinking mind keeps feeding you whatever the things that are not true you're functioning from is telling the thinking mind. And so your mind isn't a reliable instrument to check, what's going on here. And you start thinking, and the next story comes, and the next story comes, and the next story comes. What is a tool that you have available is sensing if something is light to you. Because when something is light, that connects you with what is true. When something is not light, that's not for you. That's not true for you. And so when you ask yourself a question, I do this a lot when people have no idea where to look, and you've seen this many times, is it true? And they, yes. And I say, okay, now say no.
I've seen it.
And they're like, no. And I asked them which was lighter, and all of a sudden they realize no was lighter. But of course they function from, this is absolutely true, this is how it is, of course this is how it is, right? Except that was based on a bunch of lies that you were not aware you were functioning from. And all of a sudden, by you saying no, you realize that was lighter. And in that moment, you connect to something that is true for you. Instead of thinking about the answer and trying to give like the correct answer or the right answer, the energy of the sensation of light to an answer gives you much more clarity about what is actually true. You can do simple tests with yourself in a way to ask, is everything that I believe about what's going on here, is that true? And say yes and say no and feel what is lighter, and you feel it more here. This is, your mind is not, don't think, just, is it true? Yes, feel the sensation. Is it true? No, feel the sensation.
We should learn this at school.
We should.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great idea. The energy of lightness shows you what is true for you. And that allows you to basically bypass the thinking mind that keeps feeding you information. Kids don't have this problem, I don't have to explain. If I do this with a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old, it's like, I don't even have to explain this. They get it immediately. Yes, no, they know, immediately. They can, but grown-ups, difficult. Because grown-ups have such a vast construct of conclusions and all kind of things that they made real and all kinds of things that they made true. And it's a web that has become so dense that they can't really connect anymore to what is really true. They can only connect to that structure which tells them what is true, which is mostly based on at least partly things that are not true. And that's where we can get so stuck.
Right. Can we come back about to my experience with the density? And
Yeah.
I know there is a lot of people with depression and feeling in this black hole.
Ah, yeah, there are people who
Yeah.
have that. Yeah.
So what is going on there in terms of this construct?
Okay. This reality on Earth where we are, is difficult for some people, or quite a few people at times, because a lot of the understanding gets found through some form of pain. And it's not that it's designed to make people suffer, but something is not seen by somebody, but the being wants to evolve beyond a certain point. Let's say who you are in essence seeks to have an experience where it wants to evolve itself through having new experiences, and it wants to know more about who it is, and it does so by learning what is not true. And what you said about when you were young, you were functioning from a perspective where there was no capacity of, or at least no sense of capacity to create your own life, to create your own experience. Everything was just horrible. Everything, you were in a way a victim of all this sadness. You didn't even understand how other people could be, And so in that moment, what really occurs is such a compression takes place, because you function from things that you do not know you function from, that are not really true for you, that until, let's say, that's seen and resolved, the pressure will just keep going and going and going. And there are, let's say, two versions of this. There is a version where people just have this as an ongoing thing in their life. So they have events where they experience difficulty and okay, it relaxes a bit. They experience difficulty, it relaxes a bit, and this is their life. And some have this going on more often than others, but this is kind of version one. And then there are people that go through phases where a lot of that density gets compressed in a very short amount of time. And that can be really intense because in that moment, let's say people separate almost themselves entirely from the connection of everything outside of them. And so they feel very alone, they feel very compressed, and there is no perspective of getting out of that situation. But in those moments, what is really occurring, there is a deeply felt sense about what is not true for that person, and that compression in a way allows to feel that through and metabolize that in an accelerated way. Most people don't do this. Most people get little parts of that in experiences that they give themselves, and every time they're sad and they feel, oh, this happened, and whatever, and so they get a little taste of it. But what really every time happens is they give themselves an experience. It makes them feel sad, contracted, la la la, because they haven't seen clearly what really is creating that experience. And people, of course, think, what do you mean creating that experience? I got sick. That has nothing to do with me. My best friend died. That has nothing to do with me. I understand that when you go through these things, it can be really, really intense and really, really difficult. And from that perspective, that seems incredibly real. But it's not as random as we think. It has to do with giving yourself an experience that gives you difficulty because you can't see clearly what that is. And you mean, what do you mean? Somebody died. Horrible. Yes, but if you see it from a perspective of we are all beings, we give ourselves, let's say, an experience in this life through a design that we create. You also had that design. That person also had that design. In a way, we give each other experiences. We play roles for each other in a certain way to give each other experiences in this life. And so somebody who has that experience, you haven't seen their path. You do not know their path. You may have a judgment about the fact that they died too early or whatever, and you think that's wrong, but you do not know their path. Maybe you love them very much and you feel that you're missing them very much now because they're not here anymore in physical reality. But these things are not here to make you suffer. They're here to make you experience something that you still can't see with clarity, can't see with compassion. People are like, why would I do that? Can't I learn this in another way that's more fun, or something? But the problem is, most people just go do things that avoid looking at the things that they don't want to see or are not so easy for them. And so if they wouldn't get yanked back every now and then to say, look at this, because I make you feel this for a moment, nothing would really change. They would just get a beer, they would have a barbecue, they would maybe go to work and, whatever, and that's it. But the being isn't really interested in a life where nothing gets transformed, nothing gets experienced. The being wants a few, not 50, but wants a few things. I don't know, 50, maybe some 50, but this is not every day is a lesson kind of, hardship, but the being wants you to experience some things in this experience of life. It wants you to evolve through those experiences. And if you do not get, let's say, the message, like the guy who was being betrayed all his life, he didn't see that it was something in him that caused the betrayal to keep going and going and going. And so the experience repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And every time, these people are, no, but you cannot trust anybody. People are evil. Yes. Or maybe you could look at what's going on in you to start understanding that you're generating this experience to show yourself about something that you haven't seen cleanly. And once you have, you let it go, that problem goes away.
So can we say that people who have depression, their inner self is bringing this situation and contraction in order to they can see the truth?
Yeah, so if you really talk about depression, I don't want to put it on one pile, but what in essence happens is the contraction goes on so for a long time and is so deep that that sense of disconnection continues to exist. Now,
Yeah, it's that a sense of disconnection from the
yes,
world. Yeah.
yeah, there are as many explanations almost as there are cases. So I don't want to say this is what's going on when
Mhm.
people are depressed. That would just not be clean, and it would also not be accurate. But the phenomenon that is being experienced is what I just described. Um, what the reason for that experience is, I do not know, um, unless I have a conversation with somebody and I can ask some questions and we can get to something
Yeah.
that might show, oh, this is at the heart of it. Um, maybe we can dissolve the generator of what's actually behind this, this state of deep compression that feels you so separated from everything else. Yes.
Okay. While we are talking about this, I start to think is I feel is true for me is light to realize that we don't know what other people is experiencing. We
Correct.
cannot judge them if they die or if they have an intense experience, and that make me think or ask to you, what is the connection between our lineage, family, and the lives that came before? I'm talking like many years ago.
Yeah.
It's like our as humans and we are evolving. Is this just information that's being releasing from traumas?
Whew. Okay, so maybe one thing to say about lineage is that often these beings have had interactions in other experiences, typically family relationships, let's say family relations, are not created for the first time or the only time in one experience. Often they run through multiple experiences, multiple, let's say,
Hmm.
lifetimes. And so you're the mother this time, and maybe the brother next time, and the child the time before, and so of the same person. And so often you see that in family lineage things, relationships have been cultivated throughout lifetimes on a
Okay.
being level. And what also is not rare is that beings, in a way, help each other to have certain experiences. And this may sound very weird, but when you make the plan, the design, and that with where certain things are being part of the experience you desire to have, there can be roles that other beings take on for you in order to give you that experience. And so, what is also not rare is that somebody is being maybe a victim of something that occurs in their life, and somebody else is the perpetrator, and they may reverse roles. And so, sometimes these things really work throughout different lifetimes, and these connections exist beyond lifetimes. And sometimes people know this, right? When they say, "I know you," we already know each other. That connection, people have that they know. I don't know, but I feel I already know you. Often that's true. That is a connection that is not from this experience, but
Mhm.
from another one. And with family, this is very common. And with family, therefore, the themes that are, let's say, explored can often be continued in, let's say, in a same group of those beings that experience intensities, experience judgments that at some point then are time to resolve and release. And yeah, and so we take that on from our lineage, but in a way, we often have been part of more of that story before we arrived. Maybe not always, but this is not uncommon.
This is so interesting.
Oh,
Actually, it makes me feel like more lighter
ah,
about
good.
my own family.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. also because part of my depression was related to my childhood, and it's interesting to know that we have like some roles that we are playing.
Yeah.
And I used to judge a lot my dad for being he chose a life of a lot of density. And at some point in this path or journey of trying to see things different, I receive like an awareness that I don't know how to explain this, but it's like in the deep of my heart, I know that he chose this role before coming here, and he's doing it like he consciously.
Okay.
So I felt like so honored for being her child, like her daughter, and experiencing all these dramas in my childhood, and that
Okay.
gave me a lot of release. So yeah, I'm sharing this because it's really, now that you explain this, it's like, woof, makes me like, yeah, realize that, yeah, for me it's true.
Yeah. When we are here and we live this life, we are completely disconnected from, except for, maybe 0.1% of people who remember other lifetimes, but let's say most people have no connection to any of it cognitively. Yes,
Yeah.
energetically, totally, no. And of course, when we're here, we're like, but this seems so real, and yeah, that's the whole idea of having these experiences. If we would know it's not really real, we would know, like, I know I have a bank account, but it's not really real. I just make, I kind of make that up because I want to. Then we wouldn't believe it. We wouldn't be like, we would just know that we could cheat in the game because we wouldn't buy into any of it, and so we wouldn't create any experiences that we don't want to have. And so then the whole point of the evolution through life in more dense experiences wouldn't exist, because you have to buy into the reality of it to experience it with the intensity that people get to experience it with. And so the difficulty is, of course, shifting that perspective from, okay, I experience this on a daily basis, that's cool, but there is a design level that is kind of, that's specific to me and to you and to everybody. And in that design level, we not only seek to have certain experiences for ourselves, which is your design, and most people have no idea about their own design, and maybe until the end of their life. What you just said about your father showed in a way that you went to a place where you could see, his path really is chosen for him to. He chose to experience something that is very easy to have a judgment about if we look at it through human eyes. But there's no need to have that judgment, because although I don't know his path precisely, I can sense that that's part of his path. And so it's okay, because it was part of the choice of the experience that he wanted to give himself. And so when we look around us and we see the lives of other people and we get all worked up, you do not know their path. And it may seem extremely cruel what they are going through in your experience, and it may seem extremely unfair, and you may make it immensely wrong, but that is not the same as seeing clearly what is going on, because the fact that it triggers you says something about the judgments you have, not about what's going on in their life. The fact that it doesn't make you go, I'm curious what they chose to experience in their life, says something about how you like life to be organized for everybody. And that's, in a way, a judgment that you have about what's right and wrong. And it's also a way to see something about you, because your attention get drawn to certain things in your world, including certain experiences that you notice that other people have, and those experiences trigger you. Maybe you get really upset about some cause and you think this is the greatest problem in the world. There are many problems that people think is the greatest problem in the world. This one triggers you specifically. That's not random. That says something about you.
Mhm.
And so rather than or making everything be so unfair, it can give you more if you start focusing on, hey, why is this triggering me so much? Because that's actually something about me. And I'm not saying there is no expression of difficulty in this world. I'm not saying there is no expression of unkindness in this world. I'm not saying any of those things. They are part of the reality of Earth. But the feeling that you have with it comes from a lack of clarity that you have, not from compassion.
Yeah.
Because compassion can exist without you feeling contracted, without you getting upset. What you just did with your dad, that has to do with a combination of clarity and compassion. I see that he chose something for himself to experience that, in the experience of itself, may seem difficult, but I know that, I accept it. In a way, I'm grateful for being his daughter so I could experience some of that firsthand to get to know more about who I am.
Yeah.
But that's clarity and compassion.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's true.
Beautiful to realize that after being in this dark spot in my childhood. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. I would love to ask you another thing. When we were in Mexico last time recording the previous podcast,
Yeah.
and I remember I shared with you that I had like inside of me and a pressure or a need of it was something that didn't make me feel relaxed, and you start to asking me things about my family, or we start to had a conversation, and I remember that it was related with my mom. And when I was very young, she was always telling me, you have to be ready for the life is difficult, life is it's hard, it's tough, you need to be strong and you need to go and fight for what you want. So in some way this make me be all the time like feeling like I need to do things by myself. It was so difficult for me to ask for help, and that made me feel very contract in right now I'm 36, but since I was living alone at 18 I went to university, and I think I give to myself many things that it wasn't needed, but because not asking for help. And
You mean you created difficulty in your life
yeah,
just because you didn't ask for help?
exactly. And I
Right.
felt like I need to do this by myself and show to others that I'm strong and I can do this by myself. So after talking with you, first of all, what was that? What layer
Oh, you absorbed something from your mom.
from my mom?
Yeah, that's just, I'm a kid, I'm a sponge. I don't know, I absorb these energies. Boom, now it's mine. I'm functioning from it. It's never, was it yours?
Yeah,
Was it yours?
no.
No. Boom.
But it's so amazing that you did it like this, so fast in 1 second. And this thing, it's been sitting with me for so long.
Okay, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
It's not yours.
Those one, we all have those one, right?
Well,
Difference.
I'm not going to
Different
say
ones.
everybody has those ones. Everybody's different. It's not rare. Many people have absorbed things that are not there. They're foreign, and they locked in energetically, and they of course feel 100% real because they entered without. Well, with you, there was still a process of your mom telling you need to do this, you need to do that. Most people, or many people, get that without even knowing that it entered because their mind was never involved. They absorbed something energetically. They stored it in the layer 3 we talked about, the library in the first episode, and now they're functioning through it every day, and their mind goes, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this. Yeah, it's not yours.
Yeah.
But you can function through that for as long as you want, your whole life.
And you know what's the funny thing? When I asked her, I told her, Mom, you remember when you told me all these things about being strong? And she said, yes, I remember, but I don't even think like that anymore. So now she's living the best time of her life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you may have helped her let go of it. Because in a way, you absorbed it, transformed it, let it go, and energetically, she probably has picked up on that transformation, because you function from a level of consciousness where you could see that for what it was. And it's not impossible that she, in a way, in that moment also realized that that was just, it wasn't hers probably either.
Right.
I know it feels real, it doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
It's the layer feeding you the information. And the anxiety comes from fear. And fear is there because there are constructs there that you make true that are not true and you haven't seen clearly.
Okay. Talking about fear,
Oh,
I have another one I would like to share
tell us.
with our friends. And this was very recently.
Okay.
One of my biggest fears was related to money.
Okay.
Money, that topic that for many it's not easy.
It's not easy for
I'm not
many.
saying that we all have the same pattern or the same source that as I did.
No, definitely not. But tell us yours.
Okay, so all my life or long time ago, I always had the feeling that money was, it makes me feel nervous, scared. Even though I went to university, I had good jobs, and I was earning money enough to live by myself, but all the time had experiences where I get like crazy bills from the utilities, and like from no sense, like what is going on here, like all the time I had problems and debts, and I felt really ashamed all the time. And of course, as I also had this other pattern of not asking for help, I was like in a hole feeling
Nice.
very ashamed. So that didn't help either. But it's interesting when you start asking me, okay, where does this come from, all the things that you do, and you found that this was a kind of fear that I had from my lineage, right?
Yeah.
So that's another
Your grandfather,
layer.
no?
My grandfather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, money is just a lot of money. A lot of people have issues with money, not because it's specifically about money, but it is, let's say, the interaction where a lot of the things that we do in life happens in a way, and it has to do with, can you receive it? Do you feel worthy? All these things. Are you, have you done shady things to earn money in the past that you still have a judgment about, or did you absorb, like your case, did you absorb that from other people? So there's all kinds of stuff that doesn't directly have to be related to money, but gets expressed through money. And finding out what those charges are is often not really asking about the money problem per se. It is about, what is really driving this. What is the thing that doesn't allow you to receive? Because most of the time, it's many people would like to have more money, but often people are not willing to receive other things that are part of that equation. And a big one is the receiving of judgments. So a lot of the things that people do keeps them in a place where they believe that other people will not judge them. That's kind of the safe space within which people prefer to move. I'm not saying this is true for everybody. There are people that move far beyond it, and often the ones that move far beyond it create quite expansive lives. Entrepreneurs choosing something that nobody believes in the beginning, artists expressing themselves in weird ways that may not be connected with in the beginning, and they just keep going. People choosing something that's different than everybody else, and everybody thinks you're crazy. But these are, of course, the people that choose something that doesn't give them the validation of others. It gives them often judgment, or at least the lack of understanding of others, but they choose it anyway. In that choice alone, there is already a choice of, I'm taking all the judgment that comes with it also. And this really has to do with, can you receive everything that is part of, let's say, the influx of energies in a way that you are exposing yourself to, or are you like, no, I want people to like me, and I want more money, and those are the things I want more. Yes, but the need for you to be liked is already a reflection of you're not willing to receive a judgment of somebody who has a need to be right about maybe their very mediocre life. So they go out and judge other people so that they can be right about their mediocre life, because now you are living in Bali and doing all these cool things, and maybe somebody at home says, well, whatever they say, because they can't be right about their more mediocre life if somebody else shows them, a life that is maybe much more expansive. And so you need to be willing to be totally okay with that. Because if you're not willing to be okay with stepping into, let's say, the next version of you that is making more money, and absorbing whatever comes with that, it's a package deal. So that's an example of where people often limit themselves. And the other thing where people often limit themselves is thinking that money is the solution to their problem. And there are many ways in which we can receive things. And this is really funny because people often see this, the ones that are financially already wealthy, they receive all the freebies and everything comes easy to them all the time. But it's not because they have money that these things come easy. It is because they are aligned with receiving things. So the synchronicity also shows up. So the things that get offered for free also shows up. There is no contraction around receiving. There is no neediness. There is just, no, I'm here. Show me, give me, or whatever. And so the contraction that is associated often with money for people, not rarely is associated to receiving more broadly. And that's the whole range of the judgments, but also the things that can come to you in other ways.
Like me, my example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you.
Yeah, because in my case, it wasn't only like not identifying myself with not wanting to receive. It was more like a fear that paralyzed me.
Yeah, your case was quite specific. So
Right.
what I spoke about now has to do more with general, are you willing to receive something? You had a very specific case where there was a judgment attached around the topic of generating money. And that judgment, or the fear in a way associated with another experience that hadn't been seen. You'd absorbed it, you lived it, but you hadn't released it.
Yeah.
And so that's a very specific thing that was part of you. And so what I just described applies to more people than the specific case that you have. But there can be other things like you have that prevent you to have ease with making money, because you think it's dangerous, or because you think it's immoral, or because you have had money and were very rich and you've maybe used it to suppress other people in other lifetimes, and you still have a lot of judgment about that stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people who have judgment about rich people have been rich themselves and done things that they have judged themselves for. I'm not saying everybody with money is kind. I'm not saying everybody without money has that problem. I'm saying when you judge people that have money, that's about you, not them. And that has often something to do with either something that's not yours or something that you haven't seen from another experience you gave yourself in another time where you had money and you did things that were not so nice.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that applies to you. I'm just giving some
I understand.
big blocks. Yours was specific.
Yeah. I also think it's very interesting that in this topic about my experience with money and the example I just shared is that I tried family constellations with the topic of money.
Okay.
And it was interesting. It was useful. I could understand that what I was feeling, it was fear.
Okay.
And the woman who did it, she was a channeler, so she told me this is related to someone in your family, but I could logically understand what happened, but
Yes.
that didn't help me
Release.
to dissolve it.
Yes.
So the moment you told me, okay, look, there is something related to your lineage, someone did like earn money doing something that was not good, and that's why you have this fear of the money. And then what you did, the words and everything, like helped me in that moment to feel like, whew,
Yeah.
it's not there anymore.
Yeah. The rational understanding of something is, it's okay, but you know when you got it when it's gone.
Mm.
And I think that's that's in a way what the difference is between analyzing behavioral patterns. And you can talk forever. You can write 100 books about it, and you can talk for 100 hours. But did it change it really, or do you know more about it now? Or this is it. Are we dissolving it? Seconds.
Seconds.
Done. That's it. But that's another level of consciousness. That's a perspective that has greater clarity and can intervene directly in what the true cause is, because the true cause is seen with precision. And when it's seen with precision and it's met with something that has enough coherence for the other people to let it, for the other person to let it go, it's gone. Seconds. And that's the true test. Have you really seen it, or are there more stories added to it?
Yeah. Yeah. And when you say it to me, it felt like my body knew it. It's like from
Yes.
here.
Yes.
It wasn't like telling me a story about what could be from another life or whatever. No, it was like clear. Like I deeply knew it.
Yes.
Even I also had a dream about this where I was running and people were coming. It was like I was running with more people, but not much. And I was telling them, run, they are coming to kill us. And this group of people were coming to kill us. And at some point I stopped it and I told them, kill me.
Yeah.
Don't kill them, kill me. And I know that that dream was about my grandfather or whoever was in the lineage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was ready to release that.
That's the other thing, huh? So that's also, we talked a few times about other methods and techniques. We release something that is ready to be released. And sometimes we hang on to things that are also ready to be released. So I'm not saying that you can't speed up the process, but there are things that the being seeks to have some experience of, and through having felt something enough to know it enough, it in a way puts that node, that charge, at a threshold position where it can be let go. Not everything will release. I've seen it with many people. Like I've seen it, but they will not allow entry, because, and people get really upset when you try to get something out of their world that apparently seems to be limiting them, but they haven't had enough of the experience of yet. You gotta really stop, because not only will they not let it go, they'll get really upset with you. And they don't really know they get upset with you, but there is a level of readiness, and that has to do with, did I experience it enough to know it enough so I now can let it go? And that's not always the case.
So it's like there needs to be energy accumulated of feeling, of emotion, in order to be ready to release it.
If I go back to the being who seeks to know more about itself and gives us certain experiences to know more about who we truly are, then, and it bakes into that design certain specific elements for us to feel again that we haven't felt felt through, then you can imagine that there can be moments in the arc of that charge where the time is not there for that experience to have been felt enough. So the being goes, not now. Let that person hit the wall maybe one or two more times before it's ready to let it go. And I think we had a amazing example the other week. We did a clarity room, and there was someone there who just had dengue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that wasn't random, because what was going on in that person's world was that it always had the idea that it needed to be perfectly fine themselves, and they were there to help other people, and they were not there to receive help from others. They were there to help others, and they kind of didn't allow themselves to be present with whatever wasn't working in their life. And so he just got out of the hospital. And it's funny because I had seen him just before he went into the hospital, where he's, no, it's everything is fine. I have a fever. And I'm like, dude, but I'll eat something tomorrow. I'll be fine. And I'm like, that's not true. And it turned out he had dengue. The next day he's in the hospital, and it didn't go very well. And I'm not saying he was close to dying, but it was a possibility that he would, because, blood values and stuff. And so a week later, he's out of the hospital. A week later, he comes to see me, and we release it, because this was something that had to do with his mom. But he had felt it one more time very deeply. He gave himself a very intense experience to feel that again. And that was apparently, in his case, enough to say, okay, I can now let that go.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't random. That was, in a way, the structural arc completing. Feel it one more time, so you know when I tell you what it is about. It's not vague. It's exactly this. And you've been in the hospital for a week, and you felt it again, and you have felt it before. And so there is a level of maturity of the experience that typically is required for it to be released.
Yeah. And Ron, how does life feels when you start applying all this in your own life? And I just experienced releasing two big things in my life with you, and I know you also been releasing yours, and seeing also people around you releasing big things.
Yeah.
So what happens after? Like, how is life after?
Okay, so here's a two-part answer here. The first thing is we get very quickly used to the new level. So we're like, okay, life is better, but this is like, after a few weeks, it's like, okay, this is now normal, and what's next? So there is a bit of getting used to things that almost makes us forget the contrast after a while.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's just that things, in a way, normalize to just a level of everything is a little bit easier. Just a level of that thing is no longer part of my world. That pain in my body is no longer part of my world. So great. But it adapts to what we consider to be normal, because we stepped into the next frequency bandwidth. We stepped into the next level of what we get to experience life as for ourselves. But the other thing is, of course, that a lot of people, a lot of the time, are preoccupied with things that are not really helping to create a life that is fun or expansive or growing. They worry, they have all these charges maybe that weren't there, maybe their body gives problems, they feel limited in what they can create, it doesn't move. And of course, the greatest gift is that those things start falling away. And so not only time opens up to do other things and worry, it's also the thing that got unstuck. And so life starts to move again. And so whatever that is, maybe creation starts to flow, maybe relationships get easier, whatever it is for the person is that thing for the person, but it gets you unstuck. And that's really, being stuck is not fun, not being in the perfect place is okay. Having the sense that you're creating towards something that you desire to experience, that's enough. That's joyful, because where we're going changes every time anyway. There is no destination. It's just we are creating towards what we think is nice. We have relationships that give us, joy or excitement or whatever it is. And so if we feel we're stuck and that is not accessible to us, it doesn't have to be there now, but it's not accessible to us because, it doesn't, or a body that just works and has no pain, which is pretty great. That's really something I think is pretty wonderful. Yeah, that's pretty wonderful.
I have an example also. Every year I go to Winter Clash. It's a huge contest in landscape
Skating.
rollerblading.
Yeah.
It's in Netherlands and in Doven. So it was very nice that last year they invited me to be. No, it was the year before the last year. So they invited me to be in a talk, and I was so nervous, and I prepared myself, and I was there with the cameras, and I did it, but I felt very nervous contract. And then I went to Mexico the next year. We'd start doing the episode of the podcast. You did facilitation with me, and then they invite me again this year to Winter Clash. They also invite me to share about a topic, and I was feeling so relaxed in front of the cameras with the people. I was not nervous. So then I realized, oh my God, I have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I did a course about speaking
Yeah.
in public. No, it's just my energy. It's me, like, more present.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I experience myself.
That's
this
amazing.
change.
Yeah. It's so wonderful. It's so nice, when somebody tells you how their life has changed as a result. That's just so cool.
Yeah, I feel so excited about my life now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
I think I'll leave the marketing with you then.
I'm just being honest.
That's the best way to explain the effect.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so for the people who want to read the book, they can find it in Amazon.
Yes.
Also, the first book of Ron, that he just did some update to the cover that looks pretty awesome.
Your hidden limitations.
Your hidden limitations.
You don't outwork them, you dissolve them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are working in groups in live for the people who want to experience this directly from Ron. We are offering these sessions. So if you are interested, just send us a message and we would love to connect. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
this amazing episode.
Nice.
Nice.